Hi, I'm Spike Robinson, and this is my co-host Monia. And for this week, we've got a bit of an unusual show that maybe not too many of you have heard of. I know that Monia hasn't heard of it before I turned her on to it, and that is the 1967 ITV show from Britain called The Prisoner with Patrick McGoohan. Now, you might not have heard of it, but if you have heard of it, then you're a fan because it is one of those shows that has a cult following, not cult in the way we talk about culty, but a cult following as in a big group of fans who watch this show over and over again.
They have an active fandom.
It has a very active fandom. It was filmed in a lovely place in Wales called Portmerion, where you can actually, if you've got enough cash to burn, you can go and actually stay there. It's expensive as heck, but oh my goodness, it is pretty. And I'll be putting bits and pieces of it up as well as the link because, oh my gosh, it's wonderful. This is one of my goals to go and see it now. So send me money. No.
Travel fund.
Yeah, Spike's travel fund. In the show, it's a cross between James Bond and a Rene Magritte painting.
Oh, yeah.
It is
what a great comparison. Comparison.
When I was a teenager and was just being introduced to this show, that is how the friend who introduced it to me described it.
Okay, yeah, that was too good to be like a corporate sell because I feel like the slogans that I was, or like the descriptions I was reading, I was like, I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, it is a bizarre, surreal thing. Now, first, a word about the entire show. It has one of the longest opening sequences in the history of television, which basically shows Danger Man. Now, at the time of the filming, Patrick McGoohan was easily one of the most famous actors out there. In fact, Danger Man, called the Secret Agent Man in the United States. If it's different, I'll put it down below. And he was actually set to become the new 007. This is before Sean Connery. He was going to be the first 007, but he dismissed it because it was too commercial, and we can get into exactly how hard he was to work with. In researching this, I watched a couple of making of documentaries and found out he was the type of actor who, well, he had exec producer credits already, and he sacked directors, yelled and screamed at people. One of his co-stars had a bona fide nervous breakdown on the set, and they had to stop filming for a day while he went and had his breakdown.
So he was treating the set for this dystopian situation by himself, creating an atmosphere of
fear, terror. He was a bully. And then it's kind of funny because you see people talking about him in the making of, and then you see, and I'll leave links to all of these, of course, the couple actresses say, I despised him. I would never work with him again. But McGoohan was an excellent actor for this one character. Like we mentioned in the Harry Potter one that we just put out, that there are a certain class of actors that can only do that one character. Well, that's who McGoohan was. He was this hard as nails, very stiff upper lip, British secret agent man who I think would have made a better 007. But he didn't like to play commercial. He did not like to be in commercialized roles. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to do a show that only had 7 episodes. It was only going to be a series.
Let's also say that he did not end up with 7 episodes.
You're right. He ended up with 17.
Oh, okay.
17. They were pressured to have 17 so they could sell them to America. And they ran out of things, admittedly. So that's why the second episode that we're going to be looking at, that's why, is because McGoohan always wanted to do a Western. So he grabbed a Western plot that had been written by one of the script editors.
Yeah, I thought that was, because I did read that as well, that he wanted to do a Western. And I was like, oh, well, that's an interesting way of going about it. Like, I want to do that. Let's just do it on my show.
But okay, so a spy resigns. He gets gassed as he's going on vacation after he resigns, and he wakes up in this village where everybody has an assigned number, and nobody will tell him who they are, who's running the village, where they were, what their names were before. They've all got their assigned numbers. All they want to know is, why did you resign? And in that wonderful introduction, I can even say it by rote. Where am I? In the village. What do you want? Information. Whose side are you on? That would be telling. We want information. Information! Information! You won't get it. By hook or by crook, we will. Oh my God.
I like the point where he's like, you are number 6. And he's like, I am not a number.
I am a free
man. Yes. And then I'm like, well, you're not really free. This show has showed us.
Well, it's though. Who are you? The new number 2. Who is number 1? that mechanical thing. But every week there's a new number 2, and number 1 is represented by a red phone that's in the control room that occasionally number 2 has to answer, go, yes, sir. I know, sir. I know, sir. We haven't broken him yet. I know, sir. And just basically you can see they're sweating bullets while talking to number 1 about number 6. And we can't damage him. He's not like the others.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't understand that part.
That they can break you by doing a simple lobotomy. They could break you by really breaking you down, but he's too valuable to them.
But he's resigned. And like, they don't want him to be valuable to anyone else.
They don't want him to be valuable. They want him to be valuable to them. So they mustn't damage I love how they say it, tissue. They mustn't damage the tissue. Because these episodes usually feature around number 2 or the number 2 du jour, either trying to break number 6 and failing, or number 6 trying to escape and failing. Those are the 2 brands of episodes, or a mixture thereof. A lot of this feels to me like a fantasy. Should we bring up Spike's incredibly horrible, melancholy theory of what the village really is?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. This will make no sense to those of you who don't know the show, and all the sense for those of you who don't know the show. In the intro, the guys who gas him are these guys who drive up in a hearse and are in old-fashioned Undertaker's outfits. And they pour the knockout gas through the keyhole of the door, right? Now, he's in the village. He doesn't know where he is, but there's all sorts of impossible things. Like, he gets all the way to London, at least 3 different episodes, and then somehow gets sent back, or was never in London at all, but it was just all a trick. And I'm thinking, no, that's too weird. And then, of course, those who know the series will know exactly what I mean about the last 2 episodes. They are so bizarre. So all these increasingly bizarre things happen. And as the show goes on, and everybody who's a fan of the show knows that it was not broadcast in any kind of coherent order. You see him in the middle of the series saying he just got there. At the beginning of the series, there's somebody who obviously was killed by number 1 a little earlier on. And he's back for this other episode, but it's obvious that he did not survive that episode.
Yeah. I mean, they do have a correct order out there.
Yeah.
But this is definitely...
Can you link it so I can link it for our listeners?
Yes, I can send that to you.
Thank you.
That is one of my biggest pet peeves with networks that air stuff out of order.
What do you think of Firefly then?
Yeah, no, that made me really angry. I was really angry about that. And Happy Endings is a show that is like one of the greatest comedy shows. Oh my God, it's so funny and you laugh so much. And they ruined it because they aired all of the first season completely out of order. And like truly like the last, because I think they were like, yeah, but it's just a comedy. It doesn't need to, you know, whatever. And it's like, no, there are actually storylines and character development. This makes no sense the way you're
So we all know that these are out of order, but the last couple of episodes, last 3 or 4 episodes, and particularly the last 2 episodes of Prisoner are so bizarre and totally unreal that here's Aunt Spike's horribly macabre theory. That knockout gas that we see is not knockout gas. It is poison gas. And as he falls to the floor, he is dying. And the consequent show that we see, the 17 episodes that we see, is his brain going through that final bunch of hallucinations that a brain goes through before it dies.
A Jacob's Ladder scenario.
Basically. Basically.
I do agree with you that it would make a lot of sense.
It's the only thing I know that explains it all.
Well, I mean, considering the elaborate scheme, this was the real world, the way that they built all of that and all of the technology, that versus, oh, our spy resigns. Okay, well, we're just going to off him. Like that seems a bit more realistic.
Yeah. Also, it explains why he is so important. And he is always, oh no, I can't damage the tissue. And that they often put drugs into him and make him go on some kind of bizarre trip. That's in a couple different episodes.
It could be like a VR thing if it was present day, that they were like, we're just gonna, you're gonna go into endless simulations. And at one point you're going to break, you know?
Now, I will say, we will mention, I watched the first couple of episodes of this and I was not charmed. The 2009 miniseries with Ian McKellen as a constant number 2. In the village of this prisoner that we know and love, everybody not only has a number, but you know they're spies. They know, you know they know. In this 2009, oh, we're just a normal family. There is no outside world. It's a whole other level.
I'll still try it. I want to
try it. See if you like it. It's got some nice salutes to the old series. Okay. They've got a whole bunch of other different levels. And of course, they've also got an American number 2. So instead of, him going, I see. Well, very well then. He's got, I'm going to escape from here! Which, in my humble opinion, is all you need to know about the difference between.
And then you're like, well, he is broken. He's already having a breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, he's already just
losing it.
Yeah, just losing it. But, so in the village, everybody has just a number. It's on a credit system, and people are elected to council every year. But
it's basically all just like kangaroo courts of everything.
It's kangaroo courts.
Like everything is just like.
And you can be pulled into the doctor's office and subjected to some bizarre things like singing a ping pong ball up and down. Or tied up in a room and all you can do is move your toes back and forth to the rhythm of music. And all sorts of bizarre, surreal. I'm going to say bizarre a lot. Should we put a counter down?
I like the sound of that.
Oh yeah, let's add another
during editing.
Yeah, like I don't know what to do during editing. It's though it really is like a Rene Magritte painting. All the doorways are kind of rounded.
It looks like a grown-up Smurf village. I don't know. Like it just looks like the way the architecture looks just looks like a real life version of a lot of animated houses.
Portmerion was created in 1925. Actually, there was the castle that you see sometimes is from the 11th century. But from 1925 to 1973, this was built by Welsh architect Clough William Ellis. And most of it was done between 1925 and 1939. And from 1954 to 76, little bits and details were set up. But the entire thing was made to harmonize with the background of this lovely cliffs and an estuary with a big beach where they get all the lovely shots of people running and such. And just, what would I call it? Whimsical. I would call it whimsical. And he also hoped that his work would inspire others. And you can go there now. There's a prisoner shop, which is set up in number 6's home. And you can stay in these little cottages all around. But in the show, if you don't play along and give them the information that they want, they've got little things like chess tournaments and arts and crafts fairs and things like that. And it's all very idyllic. But if you don't go along with that, you'll get dragged in to be questioned or brainwashed or whatever. And that's where they do a lot of sci-fi brainwashing. But there's also a lot of social engineering. There's a lot of the collective.
Just the general dialogue and the interactions are very heavily weighted towards where it kind of matters a lot whether he can trust them or not. And so there's always that tension. There's not really, I feel like there's never really a time where he's just like, oh, let me go and
no, you're always watching, because the other thing about this lovely little village is you don't know who are the warders and who are the prisoners. And also then there's the mix of, you might be a prisoner and be a good little boy or girl and tell all your secrets, and then you can become a warder. And that's what it feels like they're trying to do to 6.
That is interesting, because I was thinking, like, what exactly is the end point for this? Is it just that he should live there and be part of them?
I think the why he resigned is just the starting answer.
Okay.
That's just the starting breaking point. If they can break him on that question, then they can break him on the rest.
That is interesting, actually, because now that you say that, I could see how this would be valuable for them. Like, they break him on that, and then they can go over his entire history as a spy. And like, did you find out anything that you never shared? Like, what? Like,
who's to say that this is his side doing it?
Well, that's the thing, right? I do appreciate that, because then it allows you to simply project.
You have no idea
this time, or yeah, exactly.
So the village is definitely a parable of collectivism versus individuality. That's what McGoohan thought when he was doing this. That was his whole song about it, was individuality and the mastery of the individual over this collective thing. Now, I'm not as black and white at that. I do think that in order to be peaceable people, we do have to kind of go with the crowd a bit, as long as the crowd's not trampling you down. There's one where he's declared unmutual and everybody turns their backs on him.
Yeah, that was another one that I considered choosing, because it is very, like, it's a very visible shunning, just very visible. Yeah.
It's the one that has the most social programming versus all the sci-fi stuff that they do to him.
This is not the episode we're going to talk about, but I remember
it's called A Change of Mind, and they give
the newspaper, and then it says like number 6 needs
declared unmutual. I'll find a clip of that. So, but let's get into the first episode we want to talk about, because this is the one that is a typical episode, and it's called The General. Now, this one doesn't follow one of the two, one where either they're trying specifically to break 2 or he's specifically trying to escape. This one is more, they're using the whole village for this bizarre test of speed learn. It begins with number 6 hanging out in the village cafe, and an announcement comes over that the 3-part history course is starting, and you've got to go and do the history course, and everybody leaves except for number 6 and number 12. Now, number 12 is often somebody different, but in this one, it's a very handsome young man who, as they're standing in front of a poster about the course, 100% enrollment, 100% pass. And the course is being taught by the professor, but directed by someone called the General. And number 12 says, I think you should enroll. While they're talking about this, a helicopter flies over, and the professor is seen trying to escape from the village along the beach. Number 6, walking on the beach. How does he get from the cafe to the beach? We don't know. He finds a tape recorder in which the professor's true feelings are revealed. On the tape, professor states that speed learn is an abomination and slavery, and the General must be destroyed. So 6 sees this tape recorder, listens to a bit of it, and tucks it back into the sand so that nobody can see it, because along comes a couple of the village goons. Now, one thing about the village goons is fun, is that anytime 6 goes out of bounds, these guys in these cheerful striped rugby shirts come along and beat them up. And there's always an excellent fight scene.
You need fight scenes for spy content.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah. So he's being shepherded home by 2 of the village goons. He witnesses the recaptured professor proceeding with the education, which instills a detailed but fairly sterile set of data on European history.
The actual learning part is like stare at the screen.
He's staring at the screen, and then suddenly you know when the Battle of Whatsits was, and you can just reel off these facts. But notice when he's quizzed, he says, what was the treaty of such and such? And he gives the dates and blah, blah, blah. But what was the treaty? You answered when it was, not what. So it's not the substance. It's just the rote facts. Now, this is obviously sci-fi. I don't think you can do this. You could probably, if you had it played over and over and over again, you could get the rote facts to people. But
yeah, the technology isn't there yet.
Yeah. Thank God. So any case, number 2 has got his panties in a bunch because he knows that the professor's notes, that tape recorder, is missing. He immediately suspects 6. Well, he's the only troublemaker in the village. So they go around and he doesn't have it. I forget what deal he promises to make if the tape recorder comes, but number 6 says, nope, don't have it. Sorry. So number 6 goes back to the beach to find the tape recorder after number 2 leaves his little cottage, only find that number 12 has it. Number 12 agrees to help number 6, but 6 is still suspicious of 12. So number 6 goes around to the professor's house, where the professor's wife is directing a little art salon, a guy tearing a piece of paper. He's creating out of destruction. Somebody who's sleeping is finding a new perspective, or the guy standing on his head is looking at things in a different way. So he goes into their private quarters and the professor's wife is going, please, no.
Yeah, but that's because he crushes.
Yeah, he sees all these little covered effigies and he pulls them off. And some of them are past number 2s. Some of them are historical figures. One of them is him. And then the professor, they say well, there he is. He's in bed. He's sleeping. You mustn't. And he grabs a stick and he goes, smash.
Yeah, that's when she screams. Yeah, and it's like,
yeah, that's when she screams. It was just an effigy, but what if it hadn't been? How did he know?
Yeah, I was very confused about that, and also like where actually is the professor then? Because he has already tried to escape, to be under very close guard now.
Yeah. So of course he'd be sedated.
He suggests that the woman is actually the general because he draws.
Because he draws a portrait of her as the general, and she tears it up angrily because he's trying to find out who the general is, and he guesses that
too much.
She's going, we came here voluntarily. He's like, really? As warders or as prisoners? He's terrible to her, though he does deliver the best line after he smashes the professor in bed.
You should take greater care of him, ma'am. He's gone to pieces.
Scene changes amid a wild carnival celebration. Now, this is like British Rag Week, isn't it? Is it during exams in British universities that people dress up in costumes and bug people for spare change?
I've never heard of this.
I think it's something called Rag Week. I don't know. British people, we got some good comments about houses on Harry Potter in our last one. So please, same viewers, let us know about Rag Week. Do people dress up in monkey costumes and accost people? And is there like a...
It sounds dangerous. It sounds like there should be warnings for stuff like that, but
So after a wild carnival celebration where everybody shows how they know the rote answers, the reporters going around and asking random history questions to people, and they're all going, I know that. It was the Treaty of Westphalia. It was that, blah, 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 blah. I obviously haven't memorized those. And 6 is fearing that SpeedLearn could be eventually used for mind control. You think? However, he goes back to his own house and there's a sudden power outage during which number 12 assists him by saying, you want to take this down? Here's this ballpoint pen. It's got the microfilm. And how do you get in with these tiny little coins, these tiny little passes? And it's going to be a message that will play for the professor's confession. And then the power goes back up. And he says, I'll take care of you. So he's playing both sides there. Number 12, for his own reasons, wants this gone. And then, before the next lesson to be broadcast, number 6 infiltrates the projection room. And after a fight with the projectionist, installs his own message. Now, a word about the infiltration. First of all, where did they all get the top hats? Where did number 6 get a top hat?
It might be the same one that the kid has later on in... Yeah.
It could be, but it seems everybody has a top hat and those big sunglasses that you can wear over glasses. I have a pair of those. But you get into the room, you put this little token down, and a little tiny hand goes and grabs it back. And that was actually a popular toy from the 1960s. It was a kid's bank.
Oh, that just made me think of the
little
claw machines.
Yeah, they're kind of a claw machine, but they also have them for like Halloween bowls and things where you reach your hand in the bowl and the hand goes, ah!
Oh, wow. Okay.
But no, it's this little green hand that comes out.
Yeah, it's not the size of the, yeah.
And it's just so funny. It's touches like this that make The Prisoner what it is.
For me, one of the things that really stood out was the swinging seats in the control room.
Oh, the big swinging seat that goes like this, and
they look like the children's things, right? And
Peter
but they're just like,
yes,
yeah. And I'm just
and what was the purpose of that?
What are they doing? Like something to the air in the village? Like, what does it mean?
Well, it's in the control room, and the beam. They go around. All I could think of is if I were assigned to that post, I would get so motion sick so fast.
Yeah,
easy just thinking.
Well, they probably assign people to posts that fit.
Oh yeah. But we got to talk about Rover here for a moment, who doesn't appear in either of these episodes. Rover is this big balloon that at first looks like a joke until you see it actually swallow somebody, and then all you see is their face going. Ah!
But I do still feel like it's a joke. Because I was so confused at first when they're like, oh no, it's coming for us. I'm like, what, the ball? The big balloon is coming?
It was originally supposed to be a little aquatic robot that could go on water and then go up onto the beach. I've seen footage of it, and I'll see if I can stick some on the screen here. It looked like a birthday cake. And it had a little thing that the special effects operator could sit in and pedal on. And it didn't work. It broke down on their first day of filming.
Change the story. He manages to escape because the rover breaks when it's going to capture him. So he's now on an escape from the village.
Well, actually, what happened was they were sitting there in Portmerion having a drink, the story goes. And they said, what are we going to use? And they looked up and they saw a weather balloon.
Oh, okay.
And they went to the nearest weather station and they bought 1,000. And they used quite a few of them for the show. And it has this and it lands on you and smothers you, or sometimes to death, sometimes just to capture. But it's one of the features of the show. It's actually appeared in spoofs of The Prisoner in the Simpsons cult episode. Marge was chased by a rover.
That's funny. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is an easy reference for sure. I mean, it made me think of the Blob, but instead of the Blob, it's, the
2009 series does have one. Ooh. But yes, it's a weather balloon. And what they did was they would fill it with a mixture of helium, hydrogen, or air, and with fishing wire, tie it to McGoohan's ankle occasionally. Or various other things. I watched, I don't know how many hours of behind the scenes documentaries here. But back to our story.
Yeah, this is a really important, this is like the,
because
pivotal moment.
So number 6 is captured. They say the real message is broadcast here, but I never find out which message is actually broadcast. You don't find out whose message is actually broadcast, just that because he had a fight with a projectionist and he cut his hand, they saw him. He also leaned back in front of the cameras to show his handsome little face. And so he's being interrogated, and number 2 suspects 12, but he needs number 6 to say, number 12, help me. But number 6 will not grass on a colleague. So number 12 is just sort of sitting there going, oh boy, they're going to catch me. But they say, well, we're going to ask the general because the general can answer any question that any of us can ever ask. And just as he's about to feed in the question that he already knows the answer to, he says, number 12 is also administration. And that's where he got the passes, wasn't it? And the professor is typing this out. He sticks it into the machine and it comes back almost before the paper has gone in all the way. There's another little strip of whatever coming out. Did you notice that? The low amount of time that it actually took. It's stick and paper, thing comes out right away.
Yeah, it's magic.
So there they are with the question. And number 6 says, I can know a question that the computer can't answer. He's basically goading him into it.
They're like, oh, you little know-it-all. You.
So he types it.
But yeah, so he feeds in a question that everyone is like, okay, whatever.
What is it? And then it pulls the old Star Trek routine of suddenly smoke coming out of it. And
it's just like trying to process the question.
And it electrocutes the professor, and number 12 comes round and tries to knock the professor off, and he gets electrocuted. There's 2 men dead, and the computer's all steaming smoke all over the place. And what was the question?
Why?
W-H-Y ?
But that, I feel like, reveals, maybe accidentally, another truth about the show, which is like, if the general doesn't know why, which you could presume is, why are we doing all of this?
Yeah.
Then no one knows.
Then no one.
Unless maybe number 1 knows. Number 1 isn't there, is just directing from afar, right?
But also the old trope of, and this is, if you go to tvtropes.com, you will get a whole list of all the TV shows and movies where some form of illogical or logical input kills a computer.
Yeah.
There's a couple episodes of Star Trek. Anybody who knows jack about computers knows that that's not going to happen. You can't input Y into a computer and get anything more than insufficient data or illogical input.
But this is not technically a computer. It's the general.
Basically, it seems like it's some form of database.
Yeah.
Because he's got everything from Play-Doh to crop spraying, I believe, is what he uses. So why? It's the one question, insoluble. No, actually, back at Groovy UV, my alma mater, some wag wrote why on one of the sidewalks in campus, and somebody else wrote because underneath.
You know what I just realized? Why didn't he ask, how can I leave?
Because it wasn't in the script.
Yeah, because McGoohan wanted actually all the episodes to be in the village, okay? He's not supposed to escape. I'm like, okay, fine.
No, well, he does so many times. And in the interview given in 1970 or 9 or something, somebody was saying, well, he does finally get out. He goes, no. Remember, the door moved by itself. He never gets out. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
It's a very interesting episode to me.
It is indeed.
Because you're right. He doesn't really try to escape in this one. But instead, the professor is trying to escape. So it still kind of has that thing.
It does have that.
And I feel like for him, it's like, oh, and he's finally not the only one who's trying to get out of here.
There's one where he gets a whole group of people together and they're about to escape, but he uses the psychological idea of anybody who acts like a boss to him and acts bossy and sure of themselves must be a jailer, and anybody who acts subservient must be a prisoner. And the group of guys that he gathers together all decide that he must be a jailer because he's acting like their boss.
Well, it's a comedy of errors.
Yes, it is. Well, the whole thing is a comedy of... Oh, and of course, the last scene of the professor's wife's garden that he goes and he tells her something and she just goes and sinks down in a chair. And then the episode's over.
That the
Probably, lady, your husband's dead. Bye-bye.
But you still have plenty of busts of him and like a wax figure, you know?
Oh, you're evil!
That wife, I mean, come on. This is like, first of all, she's in the village in the first place. So we don't know.
Does she get to stay? We don't see her again.
Yeah, no. I have to say, one of my favorite scenes does include her, which is when he finally gets home, right? And he's like, okay, I guess I'm doing this lesson now. And she's there and she's saying like, oh, unfortunately, there's been a delay. But I can do this. And then like immediately it's like, oh, sorry, get away. We're bringing him in now. You don't matter. She there's no like finish that sentence. You can't have the students get in any other information. They need to be as blank as possible for that.
Yeah, so she was basically babysitting everybody and keeping them entertained while they were getting him brushed and fed and whatever. I do like this episode because it's kind of a nice slice of village life. The fact that even the warders don't know who they can trust.
Yeah, and that adds another layer of that doubt, right? Because that is definitely how you control a large amount of people, is if they don't know who to talk to.
Indeed. Now, this is a number 2 who shows up in an earlier episode that must actually be later on, because he's the number 2 for A, B, and C. And at the end of A, B, and C, it's very clear that he is going to get, because he really messes up at the end of A, B, and C. He fails.
I remember if I watched it before this one or after.
It is in the run that's on Amazon Prime. It's earlier in the run.
Yeah, I feel like mine was also earlier.
So he comes back for A, B, and C, or he's back for this one. A, B, and C is one of the ones where they try to break him by giving him some highly hallucinogenic, dangerous drug to make him believe he's at a party back in his old life, and various people are trying to figure out why he resigned. And it's framed with number 1 on the red phone all the time, all but threatening number 2 with hellfire if he doesn't come up with the good. And he doesn't. And the end of the show is number 1's red phone ringing and number 2 going, so.
I mean, it is. And it's clearly high pressure for number 2, because it's like, if you don't succeed, then you are...
You're in a Rover chow.
Yeah.
And all taking place in this lovely little... You said it looked creepy.
Yes, but I feel like it's also because it's called a village. So part of me is like also connecting it with M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. So I'm like, this is McGoohan's The Village. There is something about when it's overly organized and clean and too cutesy. Then I'm like, there's something going on. There's something.
Okay, so let's do the second episode, Living in Harmony. Now, this one is not one that I would recommend if you haven't seen a couple more of the other episodes. McGoohan wanted always to do a Western, and since they were 10 episodes short of, no, they made a few more, and then they came up a certain number short. And so McGoohan asked for a script by Ian Rakoff, who had worked as an assistant editor on earlier episodes. This was actually based on his own personal experiences as part of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, where he was gung-ho and he wanted to shoot somebody who was pro-apartheid, and the group that he was part of were pacifists, and they said, no, put down the gun. Now you're going to see this in the episode where it begins with a Western paraphrase of the regular opening scene. That is, instead of Six riding into town in a race car, he rides into town on an oversped up horse. And I feel sorry for the horse. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how good the set treatment was for horses.
Yeah. But in any case, he turns on his badge and his gun and he leaves the town, and then he's attacked by several men in the countryside, just as the title Living in Harmony on the screen.
It's like harmony. It's like, yeah, beautiful. What a beautiful.
Yeah, with a bunch of
juxtaposition. Great. I mean, it tells you everything you need to know, because Harmony is a town where a lot of people die. Just because.
Yeah, well, let's see. So number 6 wakes from his beating and finds himself in a strange Western town. A Mexican man, or a man dressed as a Mexican, rather.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. They're like, a Mexican. I'm like, how do we know he's Mexican?
And this is like, I'm sorry, but as an American, granted, I'm an East Coast gal, always have been, but even I could tell this was not authentic to anything in the American West.
Oh. But yeah, that guy says, yeah, I wrote down his line because he says it's not wise to ask any questions here. And that's like, oh, we've got the wise words, a bit of the horror movie trope as well, where someone who is like not considered
somebody from an out group.
Yeah, exactly. Someone from an out group that is not appreciated by the rest of the people in that area, that gives a warning. And normally people are just like, okay, buddy. But yeah, no, it's...
Yep, but he's in the town of Harmony. It's exclusive, senor. And number 6 goes to the saloon and meets the mayor of the town, also called the judge, who also, I've got to say, my God, what a disgusting gray job on his hair.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like they put baby powder in his hair.
Maybe they did.
Maybe they did. It was not a very good graying. It really wasn't. Speaking of somebody who's going silver now, I can tell you that was not a very convincing gray job. Any hoodle. So he goes in the saloon and meets the judge who wants him to work for him. Why did you resign? What outfit have you got? Have you got a new job? Who are you working for? Why did you resign? What reasons? My own reasons. And then we meet with this intense, mute young man known as the Kid, who guards the jail, and also a saloon girl named Kathy. An actual name, my goodness. So after agitating the mob into trying to lynch him, for a town that's so safe and harmonious, there's a lot of people wanting to lynch folks.
Yeah, wasn't this following when he was like, I want to get out of here? And they're like, what's wrong with our town? And like it turned into a thing of like, because you insulted the town,
yeah, we have to lynch you now. It's like, that escalated fast.
Yeah. Harmony,
welcome to Harmony. If you don't like it, we're not going to let you leave. So he's taken into protective custody.
We don't know that.
Oh, okay. You're right.
To jail. Yeah, he's
taken to jail. You're right. But to satisfy the mob's bloodlust, the judge allows them to lynch Kathy's brother. And so she goes in and she talks to the Kid and steals the keys.
The Kid like terrified me, not because he was mute, but because of his behavior. Like, especially like when she came over and she's like, oh, here's some drink. And I know it was like a bit of a flirty thing, but he was just so like, oh, hello, hi.
Yeah, he was definitely creepy. Yeah. This guy, by the way, this actor, he got the role of being the Kid in the final episode because of this episode. He impressed McGoohan that much.
Wow. Well, he is terrifying.
Yes, he was meant to be terrifying. He will assault the woman. He will just be really creepy and strangle people. And he doesn't have any moral, social, or any other kind of compass.
Yeah.
And he's got this intense blue eyes. The name of the actor
was the top hat throughout the whole thing.
Oh yeah, the top hat and that shirt with the hiked up pants.
Yeah, I mean, and the shirt is like a color that stands out too. So he's always quite visible. Yeah.
Alexis Canner, who does some wonderful work. He was born in France during the Nazi regime and got smuggled out at the age of 3 to Montreal. And I believe studied ballet and dance. I'd have to look, but that's why he's so perfect in his movement.
He has good movement. Yeah. He's very nimble, I guess.
Nimble, sylph-like. He's like a wild animal on a tooth floss leash.
He seems like a very poor choice to be part of this
of the justice system of anywhere.
I wasn't even thinking of the justice system, but just trying to get him to talk, right? Because
he's weird. So any case, Catherine comes over, she distracts the Kid. Number 6 escapes only to be lassoed and brought back into town by the judge's henchmen. Why does the judge need 6 anyway if he's got all these henchmen? Any case, so he stages an impromptu trial and the judge announces that number 6 is free to go, but Kathy is guilty of aiding a prisoner escape. And so he's able to cut a deal that 6, you work for me, I'll let Kathy go.
And we should point out as well that 6 thinks that he's on trial, right? So he says, like, what are the charges?
Right.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, no, not you. You're just in protective custody. And like, so we're like, let's put him in jail so that no one can bother him. And she bears the brunt of that because she didn't know that he was in protective custody. Therefore, she did help a prisoner escape because as far as she knew, he was a prisoner.
It's just such a weird kangaroo court, though, because neither prisoner knows what they're there for.
Yeah. But that I feel like that happens in your system with like, as in your American system with certain like scary things where I'm like,
yeah.
So they strike a deal. Yeah.
They strike a deal. And so number 6 agrees and takes the badge, but refused to wear a gun. Now, if this is such a wonderful, safe community where everything works as clockwork, then why the hell does he need a gun?
I think I'm realizing right now, like literally in this moment.
Sudden realizations.
Yeah. So it is a Western town. So I don't even think it's about keeping order because this is a town where you can have duels to the death without the sheriff being like, oh, hold on, like you can't do that. So I feel like it's just part of the scenery. Like it's like we need a sheriff. Like there needs to be a sheriff. Those people can keep shooting at each other, whatever.
I guess so, but it's just because he goes outside and he's without a gun. So a bunch of guys attack him and he ends up, of course, beating the pants off of all of them because he is number 6.
Yeah,
He's the best.
If we think about this as what it is, which is, spoiler alert, not a real Western situation, it's an illusion for him. So if we think of that, it kind of makes sense that they would choose to make him take the sheriff role, because it's like, then he would somehow have all of this responsibility to keep the peace, right?
Which
and
is...
maybe they're seeing if it'll work for him, right? That he's like responsible for.
Yeah.
Well, with Catherine, it worked. He offered his
Yeah.
services instead of
having her.
It's going better than it's.
Yeah. However, the judge plans to get him to carry a gun by making unarmed men attack him. Meanwhile, the kid provokes a villager named Will to draw on him. He presses a lit cigarette on the guy's neck.
Yeah, that was one of the most psychotic things I have seen.
Yeah, this is why the kid is so crazy. He just goes up and goes,
yeah, he literally goes behind this person and is like, goes to his neck and like pushes in a lit cigarette.
And if you're in a society where drawing is...
We are in a society. Sorry, I had to.
But then all goes, well, Will drew on the kid first, Sheriff. It's like, excuse me, did none of you see the ciggy?
I saw it, but it doesn't count, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I don't like this Western style. I'm like, if this is how Western towns operate, I don't want it.
Yeah. Later, he's approached by a couple people who want him to clean up the town, saying they'll stand with him against the judge. However, this rebellion proves to be short-lived as the judge sticks his strong-armed men against the rebel and leaves the man's body for 6 to find. Well, that was a little bit pointless now, wasn't it? Who will help you out?
That is a theme that repeats.
Yeah. Everybody who tries to help him does end up dead.
Catherine wants to help, or she wants to escape.
Yeah, she wants to escape. She says, just go north. It's like,
north is the only way out, which I also wrote down. So I was like, does that mean something? Like, is that a reference to something else?
No, I didn't even think of that. I was just too busy noticing. This is true for a lot of the series because they did not have the camera technology that we enjoy and are spoiled by.
Special effects
in the 21st century.
The blood scenes were interesting.
Night scenes. There's something called day shot for night, where you shoot it in broad daylight and then you slap a blue filter over it and go, oh, it's just bright moonlight that's creating all those shadows. Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about. This is how we have to do it.
I mean, it's kind of funny to see pre-21st century film that. But getting back to our plot, so number 6 asks Kathy to escape with him, but while he's clearing the way, the judge gets the kid to kidnap Kathy. However, the kid takes it too far and strangles her. Once again, this kid is scary.
It is interesting that they say it takes it too far, because I'm like, no, man, that was his plan the whole time. Probably not the judge's plan, but the kid was like, ooh, look at that neck.
Yeah, look at that neck. You don't even know what's going through that kid's mind. But number 6 finds her and buries her. Then he turns in his badge, but picks up the gun, has a showdown with the kid, and kills him. Now, program note, the actor who played the kid, Mr. Canner, and McGoohan had lessons in quick draw techniques.
Oh.
And the crew and the rest of the cast were on scene making bets on who would draw the quickest, and they could not see who drew quicker until they slowed down the film. I don't know which one because they did not say. They just said that they could not see until they actually went frame by frame by frame to see who was quicker.
I mean, at a certain point, you can only go so fast because you do have to take it. It can't be, well, magic, it's in my hand. Like, so there is a minimum threshold. He buries Catherine, which is like already like caring for him, and then seems to be like, I will avenge.
Yeah, he's very calm, but I mean, he just met her.
They tried in another episode they actually tried in a few episodes to have women be the ones who gain contact with him and sort of like lure him into but it never really worked with those. So I wonder.
No, then there's another scene where they were trying to push a romance plot, and the script did call for him to put his arm around the woman, and he out refused to do so, that they had to bring in his own biological daughter and put her in a wig that matched the actress because he couldn't put his arm around a woman that he was not related to.
Is he secretly Mike Pence? Or like...
He was a devout Catholic. He was very anti-technology and very anti-evolution. He was not a feminist, but he did believe that women have the right to say no and that you don't press your suit upon a woman. They were to be protected and not assaulted.
That's a hodgepodge of very different.
I'm not a consistent believer.
I like the consistency because I watched it like 3 times. The movie Bergman Island. I was like, I have to watch it another time. And then I was like, okay, I have to watch it again. But there is a point there that they discuss Ingmar Bergman, obviously, talk about how mean he was. And the woman is kind of like, oh, I don't know. She said, I like consistency in artists that I love. And then one of the old men that is sitting there with her, she said, well, Bergman was as cruel in his art as he was in life. You got that? Like,
and that's the thing.
Like he's cruel. He was a cruel man.
That is where,
and in reality.
That is where I gotta say, you can't cancel the art. You can hold the people accountable for their crimes, but the art should be separated from the art.
I just find it very alarming, but I don't. Yeah, no need for a tangent.
No need for a tangent. Moving right along. So the kid takes it too far and strangles Kathy to death, and he does the shootout with the kid. The judge arrives with several of his armed men, and upon learning Kathy's death, gives number 6 the ultimatum to work for him or be killed. And although number 6 picks off the judge's men, he's then shot by the judge, and he wakes up and he's got this headset on, and he's back in his little... That's a cricket jacket, by the way, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I believe it's a cricket jacket. But once again, British viewers, please let us know, is that a cricket jacket or is Spike just talking out of her backside? Here's a trick. Any case, he was in cowboy wear. And then he wakes up and he's in his village wear, which, by the way, you can buy in the village store. You can buy a jacket just like that.
I'm sure you can make it yourself as well, probably.
If you have that kind of talent, yes.
You just need dedication and time.
I can't even darn socks. Let's moving on.
Yeah, he wakes up and then...
everybody's cutouts. The sheriff is a cutout. The kid is a cutout. The horse is that's the one that made Wally laugh.
Yeah, the horse being a cutout was definitely, the cutouts were definitely funny, but I wonder if it would have been more eerie if he'd woken up and it was just like completely empty.
Oh, just like a holodeck or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he finds out that it's just an annex to the village. So where does he go? Over to number 2. And there's the judge as number 2 with his stupid grayed hair, and number 8, who is the kid. And number 8's actually talking now, and they're arguing over who effed up and made it so that it didn't work. And number 6 barges in. He looks at 2, he looks at 8, and then he looks around and they're hanging by the bicycle, which, by the way, that's called a penny farthing and is the symbol of the community.
I had forgotten about that. That is, hipsters used to ride around on those. You would see it in the street and be like, what is happening? And it's like trying to be like, oh, look at me. I don't ride on a regular bicycle. And also unicycles. There's a few guys that are unicycling through town. That
particular kind of velocipede is called a penny farth, and that's the symbol of the village.
Yeah, and it's very, I did react to that being the symbol because I was like, it's so detailed.
They never say why they chose it as the symbol. But in any case, skulking out by the penny farthing is number 22, i.e. Kathy in a little cap and, village wear. I'm going to go to Portmerion. I'm going to get a whole set of village wear, complete with a little multicolored cloak and everything. I warn you.
Well, I'm ready for it. I'm ready.
Yeah, as soon as I win the lottery. But in any case, he just looks at them disgustedly, shakes his head, and turns and goes out. Then we see number 22, i.e. Kathy, skulking around the set of the Harmony, the Western village. And she's looking around and moping. And then all of a sudden she runs up against number 8. The kid who strangles her again. And just as she's yelling, you see number 6 in the village, and he hears her. Number 6 away, and runs all the way. He knows who it is and where she is.
I feel like they were trying to make this kind of like a romance subplot.
Yeah.
But he,
Yeah.
no offense, McGoohan, but he can't really do it.
He didn't,
as
he
we
never wanted a
just
romance
discussed.
plot. He did not want it to be about romance. He wanted it to be the individual struggle against community.
And it's very black and white.
And that's one of the reasons that the 2009 thing fails so much, is because there's obviously scads of pretty women.
All the women were dressed up as, is there a word? It's like the frilly, like, is that just Western clothes for women? I don't even know.
Those are clothes for women of easy virtue, shall we say?
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Would it have worked better if the girl had been markedly, noticeably young, and like her brother's like obviously an older brother, and that there's more of like a father-daughter relationship? You know,
Maybe
that might have worked.
That
better.
might have worked a little bit better, and maybe
because
Patrick
the
McGoohan would.
idea that he has any feelings behind that stone.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, I just met you, and now you're going to give me the key, and
this is crazy.
but here's the keys to this jail cell.
So call me, maybe. Yeah. So he goes, yeah, exactly. And it's because of what happens later that I am saying this as well. So please go on. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, he hears her from the middle of the village. He hears her and knows exactly where to run, just in time to see her dying, going, I wish it had been real.
Yeah. And that's where I'm like, okay, so this was supposed to be some sort of romance plot. Except
Yeah.
if it was real,
And then
she would be dead.
Yeah. Yes.
So what's the difference?
Who knows? Maybe
Also,
she's
killed
so
by the
unhappy
same
being in the
person.
village that she'd rather be dead.
But she would rather have been killed in the Western rather than.
I really honestly don't know. This is a lot of the thing is a lot of this stuff is very surreal. Why does that man have an apple instead of a face? Why are there a bunch of men in bowler hats raining down on this village? Why is there?
Okay, you have to stop. You have to stop saying that question so much because the computer is going to break. It's going to start smoking. It's going to lose it. You have to stop. It can't handle it.
Okay, you get all the internet's points, all right?
It's very dangerous.
You get all the internet's points tonight. Okay. But then just as she's dying in his arms, and number 2 barrels in there, it's like, what? Did everybody come all at once? Were they all skulking around? And number 8 goes up to a second floor landing. Yes. And yes, I suppose if you hit it just right, that would be fatal. But it would take a lot of doing not to just break a couple vertebrae and end up paralyzed.
Yeah,
but he dies because the script says it. The
second floor, basically. Yeah, it's very.
Yeah.
It's not that high. It's not that high. But maybe did he like dive so his head was.
He dived so his head. Yeah. Wally pointed that out to me. He said, well, if he hit just right and broke his neck, but it's like, if he hit just right.
Yeah. Do we really want to be taking these if you're doing it right? Like, no.
No. Do not try this at home.
Why does he get away with just killing him? It would have been, well, I guess continuation in another episode. But
yeah, it's for the script. But then, of course, that same actor with the same outfit is brought back for the bizarre finale.
Yeah.
That, like I said, can only be described due to ant spikes. Very morbid. Theory.
I will say though that I don't really mind that. I know we also did that. There's like one actor that's in the pilot and he's just like a random character, and then he becomes like he is a character.
Which show? I'm sorry. Which show again?
Gilmore Girls.
Oh, Gilmore Girls.
Yeah. Okay. And there's like a few others that repeat and play different characters, and I'm like, well, I guess this is part of the whimsy of.
Klinger in MASH was supposed to be a one-off. But he played his part so wonderfully that they asked him back again and again and again and again.
I do love those stories. That was a story, like, even if I don't really care about the character, I learned that was the case for Beverly Hills 90210, the original as well, with Luke Perry, that he was just supposed to be a couple episodes and beginning to make things spicier. And I don't really care about him as a character, but finding out that it's like, oh, they were so impressed with him. Like, yeah, you have work done and you're just going to like adapt it.
Well, entertainment does adapt all the time because things are unplanned.
Yeah, real life has a lot of events that
just strange stuff happens. Your mechanical birthday cake looking poetic Rover thing breaks down. You look up in the air and there's a weather balloon that ends up you're scary things.
Yeah.
Okay, well, round that, and that, of course, was the end of the show. So number 22's dead, Kathy. Number 8, the kid, is dead. And number 2 and number 6 are just glaring at each other in this old style Western saloon. End of episode. And it's
I
like,
think number 2 as well is probably just upset that he needs to replace 2 people. Like there's no like suicide. Maybe we need to look at some mental health options for the village.
well, basically is a place where people go to get broken. So.
Yes, I know, exactly.
It's very, very pretty series. But if you have never seen this, and really seriously, check it out. It's a delicious bit of surreal with the man who would have been Bond, but didn't want the commercialism.
Well, didn't want the commercialism and apparently didn't want any interaction
Can you
with women at all.
imagine, though,
Bond movies?
what Bond would have been like without the no does not mean no ethic? How much of our culture, the culture of non-consent, would have been around if it had not been glorified by Bond?
I think it would still be around because it's like people who don't even watch it still have that.
All tangents aside, The Prisoner is a delight.
I don't know if we emphasize this enough, but it really is kind of a masterclass in manipulation.
It is a masterclass in societal control because there's not just yes, they do have all the sci-fi things with all the drugs and the flashing lights.
Yeah, the fun costumes, but it is still, the kangaroo courts are there because they show what is going on when all of that doublespeak is happening.
And not only the kangaroo courts, but the societal expectations that you're going to play along, you're going to be a good little citizen. Now, some of that is very straw man-esque, because I do believe that there should be some bit of community cohesion, but not that much.
His thing of like individuality versus community is slightly misguided in my opinion, because if he was a spy, then surely he was working for a country, right?
Yeah, and I think that he did want it to show that there should be a balance. I hope that's what can be taken away, is that there should be a balance between everybody in lockstep. I dream of being in a little village where you nod at everybody and everybody knows everybody, and you somebody who's a little bit of an eccentric like me would still be accepted and allowed to be eccentric.
That Stars Hollow. If you want that, you should watch Gilmore Girls, because that's their city. That's their little town.
Okay. I'll have to take a look at that. I've never seen, I'm aware of the series, but I've never seen it.
It is actually so good. It's time for me to rewatch it again. But there are a few episodes in there that I was like, we could definitely look at as well, because
then maybe we can do that. We're going to also try to do a bit more Star Trek, because we got a request from a dear friend to do that, and we've been talking about doing 7 of 9's arc, which will mean I actually have to buy Paramount streaming in order to see her complete arc, because she shows back up again in Picard as a integrated human.
You don't mean her arc just like in Voyager?
No, she has a post-Voyager arc
where she wears actual clothes.
Yeah. So like, share, subscribe, and send us money so Spike can afford to get Paramount,
or send you the DVDs of the
send me the DVDs.
Yeah.
Anything more to say about The Prisoner?
Yeah, I'm glad you recommended it and that I got the chance to watch it.
Yeah, it is a fun show.
Here's a question, actually, because you were looking at a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Was there a reason why Living in Harmony wasn't aired in the US?
Oh, yes, there was actually. Supposedly, there's 2 different reasons, and it depends on who you ask. Okay. If you ask the Americans, they will tell you it's because of the hallucinogenic drugs. However, as we've seen from A, B, and C in a couple other episodes, hallucinogenic drugs are dropped all over the place.
I'm sorry, Mad Men told us that era was full of...
Yes. The real reason was because of the anti-gun message. And that also some execs, I don't know why, I don't know what they were toking, said that it could be unfairly drawn comparisons to the war in Vietnam, which was still raging at that time.
Okay. That sounds like someone is seeing something in there.
A lot of
They
the
recognize
time,
something and
people
no one
see
else is going to
stuff
know about it.
what they want. They see what they want to see, and they won't see anything else. It was just like I had a whole string of comments on all our videos on the New Kadampa tradition. Check those out with our lovely friend Michelle. And this one guy wrote in with comments of "stay away from the NKT," and he wrote them on all of them. And I realized that he thought that we were boosting it.
Sounds like someone who maybe just recently got out of it
And
and
is
is
so
now
angry
just like
and
highly
so hurt.
yeah, and
I have
sees
nothing,
those
yeah.
letters and is just like, oh my God, I have to say something.
And I have nothing but sympathy towards that person. Really, honestly, it might sound that I was frustrated.
I mean,
but
I've been there.
Nothing but sympathy towards that person. I have too.
Yeah.
I have
I
too.
definitely understand. I still have my hashtag triggers that
Yeah.
I try not to share too much.
But I have only sympathy, but it's an excellent example of people seeing only what they want to see.
And also needing to be in a certain space when they can absorb certain information, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. Maybe they'll come back and they'll see that we actually were talking about the abuses of it. Because I actually tried to say, have you seen Michelle's channel? Maybe she can help you. But
I was going to say, like, if he found Michelle's site, because she has a site that sort of lists a lot
yeah,
of
she's really, she's wonderful. She
that
is.
Might be more.
And if you've been in any pseudo-Buddhist high control group. Now, I'm not saying all Buddhist groups are like that because they're not, but there are a few that can go very, very, very wrong. And it doesn't even matter what the ideology is.
No, and that's so interesting because Buddhism was definitely one of the spiritual beliefs that I always thought was like, this is always peaceful. And then I heard about the Buddhists killing the Muslims over.
How about Soldier Zen?
What? Yeah, well, I mean, I heard about that like way before, and then like all the cults and everything.
Any belief system can be supplanted. Speaking as somebody who was quite active in the neo-pagan movement.
That's what I feel like people don't really realize is that any situation can become that.
Oh, Dungeons and Dragons. You ever read our RPG horror stories? There are so many times that role-playing games can turn into a nightmare because either the DM is a narcissistic person or a problem player.
That is so
and they
interesting.
abuse the social contract. Check out Crit Crab or Den of the Drake. Okay. They both do excellent stories. They read from r/RPG horror stories. And some of the stories, it's like, why didn't they leave? Because it's the same cult dynamics that we see in an abusive relationship in any cult.
I just found, it's very timely because I did just find an account from a woman who was in a RPG cult based around Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, wow, okay.
My group, actually, our leader for about a hellish nightmare for the rest of us, couple weeks, was doing Vampire the Masquerade, the LARP, live action role play. And that was a nightmare for the rest of us because he decided that was his new outlet. And sometimes I look at the stuff I went through and I was like, oh my God.
You have to laugh though, right?
You do. You do. You do have to laugh, but seriously, like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTubey things. We've been having a real spike, no pun intended, in subscription numbers lately. We love to see that. Let us know what you want us to do next. And thank you very much for watching. I'm Spike and
Monia.
And have a great day.
Hi, John here. Thanks for watching. We'd appreciate it very much if you would click like, as well as subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Every dollar helps, and we welcome new patrons on Patreon, or you can make a one-off payment with any currency through PayPal. Thanks so much.
You have to stop. It can't handle it.
Okay, you get all the internet's points.